You ever wonder why politics causes such a division where people don't even want to talk about it anymore? Where there's people pointing the finger at other people saying this side is bad or my side is the most righteous? Do you ever wonder if there is an alternative to politics, not libertarian or centrist or whatever terms people want to use nowadays? Do you ever wonder if there's one based in nature or based in thousands of years of experience that is destined for the human race? I mean, come on, that's too broad, right? That can't exist in the world. Possibly can't, right? Well, actually, I think there is. And I don't have to say I think, I pretty much know. It's based on understanding human nature, what most of us generally do in our day-to-day life, but give an exception to in politics. Because the very act of what we're doing in politics is actually the problem. So even when we try to change that system, it ends up getting worse. And that's what we see throughout history. Every time we create a new system, it ends up falling again. Nothing ever sustains. In fact, the number one cause of unnatural death is democide. And that's really concerning for me. Just look at the 21st century. Look at Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia. That's really alarming. So I don't want that to happen again. But that means we have to understand the foundations to these systems and what's actually the solution that I'm proposing here. It's not something you've probably heard of before, so you have to have an open mind and stay with me. I'm not having anything to sell here because I'm truly just doing this educationally and out of my heart. I have to care about humankind because I'm rather young in this world and I care about my generation and I see the world and how people are going mad over all these ideas. And I just want people to be more unified. I want people to have more of a sense of direction, but also get to the root cause of the problem and not just look at all the distractions and all the symptoms that happen that a lot of people tend to focus on. Because that's the truth. We're looking at the laws, we're looking at the politicians, and we're finding out what should we vote in, but maybe the solution is not there. Maybe, like a lot of our founding fathers said in America, educate the whole mass of the people. This is the only sure reliance to the preservation of our liberty, education. And so that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm educating you. It's not about the systems, but the nature of those systems, the psychology in people's heads, because what we think up here is ultimately what gets created. So put aside all the fancy legalese terms. I'm not going to bring that up to you. It's not going to be like you have to learn something new. In fact, I'm only going to remind you of who you actually are, because if we are destined for anything, and we already have the answers, we just need to apply it and discover it and live without contradiction of our own morals, our own understandings of the universe. You've never heard of this political position because it's the one that gets rid of all the division within politics. It is the one that politicians will not get a paycheck from. It is the one that brings people together rather than driving them apart. The article I'm going to read to reference here in this video is from 1988. From the voluntarist newspaper, and you probably never heard of the term voluntaryism, but that is what we're going to be talking about. It's about creating a world in which you associate with people you want to associate with voluntary interaction, not the same necessarily as what we have nowadays where people cast their votes and the majority imposes their will on the minority, or you have a lot of corruption and problems and lobbying that is in the midst. So what is voluntarism? But let's start from the basis of tactics. The tactics may vary. They may be violent or non-violent, but as long as the goal remains the exercise of power over other people, then the politics of confrontation will always sow the seeds of the next rebellion. You cannot improve the safety in your community through confrontations with police or the city council. What you can do is quietly organize your neighbors in a network of mutual support. You cannot improve educational opportunities for your children by impugning the motives of teachers, conducting a noisy confrontation with the school board, or waging a disciplined sit-in in the governor's office. What you can do is quietly enroll your children in the independent school of your choice, or if necessary, teach them yourself. And yes, you cannot stop US intervention in foreign countries by denying Caspar Weinberger a podium at Berkeley or confronting Navy locomotives in Concord. So what can you do? You follow Thoreau's advice. Henry David Thoreau, a 19th century abolitionist who's known to be quoted many times throughout this world as somebody who's a very proficient writer on the topic of liberty and freedom. He talks about self-reliance, going into nature, realizing the individual power that you have and why it's necessary to rebel against unjust laws, okay? So he's somebody who really stands up for himself. He's very brave. He even went to jail to stand up for his own principles, his own beliefs. And so he tells us, if the tax collector or any other public officer asks me, as one has done, but what shall I do? My answer is, if you really want to do anything, resign your office. When the subject has refused allegiance and the officer has resigned his office, then the revolution is accomplished. Now this sounds like a very bold move, right? Who in politics is saying, resign your office? Who in the world of people saying we need to change the world and make things better, instead of passing a law or passing a new politician, says, resign your office? But yet, this is what Henry David Thoreau is telling us, an abolitionist, somebody who wants to end slavery, a transcendentalist, somebody who cares about nature and creating harmony within the world, somebody who also is self-reliant, who likes to create communities and bring people together and realize that the truth matters above all what humans say in their fancy pieces of paper they call law. And so that's a quote from one of his most famous writings on the duty of civil disobedience. And there's a lot of kids who learn this stuff in US schools, but they don't see the foundations to what he's actually saying, especially this very powerful quote there. So when the agents of coercion, the school teachers, the postal workers, the IRS agents, the soldiers, etc., have resigned their offices, the revolution will be accomplished. Now, why is it? Why is it that the school teachers and the postal workers, why are they all contributing to that system of coercion, to violence? How could they be doing that? Well, it's simple. You have to pay school taxes. Those taxes are backed by violence. The Postal Service, U.S. Postal Service, when Lysander Spooner, another abolitionist from the 19th century, set up his own post office, he was shut down by the government. The government said, we need to be the only post office, the U.S. government postal service. And because of that, they used violence against him. They destroyed his business, even though because he provided business, he lowered the prices of postal stamps. So he kind of won at the end, in a sense. But still, if we had more competition, we'd actually have even lower prices today across the board for everything in this life. But instead, we have monopolies formed because there's violence being used against innovation, which is insane. And the IRS stealing people's money, calling it taxation, saying it's for the greater good, the common good. You don't even know where it's going. What if you wanted to pay for exactly what you wanted to pay for, rather than having it go to places you don't want it to go to? And then why do you have to use violence or justify violence against your neighbor because he won't pay for something that he doesn't want? I mean, aren't we all to live our own lives as we want? Why do we have to use violence at all against peaceful people who are leaving other people alone? This is the question at hand, and many people don't want to ask those questions. And they want to make all these excuses, but if you can answer the 5 questions I put on the screen right now for you, answer them honestly. Answer them with your conscience. And don't push it back with the propaganda you were taught in school telling you to ignore your conscience. Think about it. See, because what we are advocating is a commitment to voluntaryism, because only voluntary action, by definition, precludes the wielding of power as a goal. Confrontations, either violent or non-violent, always produce a win-loss or loss-loss result. The goal of the hothead is to wield power. His style is noisy and arrogant. His tactic is confrontation, and the products of his revolution are measured in hours and days. In contrast, the voluntarist has a goal of mutual satisfaction. The style is quiet and respectful. The tactic is voluntary exchange, and the evolutionary gains are measured in decades and centuries. Mutual satisfaction is a win-win result, and voluntarists have no need for victims and martyrs. Okay, so we're not trying to be special. We're not trying to be somebody. We're just ourselves, and we're living our own life, and we're creating the world that we want to create. So we're growing food forests. We're creating schools. We're bringing our kids to, homeschools. We're supporting projects people are making out of care and individualized support. This is what founds and creates a beautiful community and people who care about one another, and not just another brick in the wall type of system, not a collectivist system that says, well, you're just a statistic, you're just a number. No, treat individuals with respect, and then they won't have depression and anxiety and suicides like all the young kids nowadays have. I mean, you ever wonder why that is the case? Perhaps it's because all these systems are built on violence. The school system and the governments, and they have jurisdiction over all the land and all the businesses, and if they don't do what they say, violence is justified against them. Since when is violence ever justified? It's only justified in the name of authority and statism. This most dangerous superstition, as Larkin Rose calls it, the end of all evil, as Jeremy Locke calls it, and the one true divide, as Mark Passio calls it. And yet most people in the world, even in independent media, have yet to hear of it. So be sure to check it out. We have a bunch of resources and free books. All that we do is free and educational. Go to theliberator.us. That's theliberator.us. Thank you very much for watching.